Today we're going to be talking about RTF prompting, how to write better prompts and get better results. This lesson is for AI 840, AI literacy. And let's go ahead and get started today. Um, just kind of a simple introduction. AI really has come on the scenes the last few years. And there's kind of a humorous meme on screen. You know, what we think AI is going to do for us is something akin to utopia, and what's actually going to happen is maybe something out of James Cameron's vision of the Terminator. We hope not, but AI is getting a little bit scary as of late if you read any of the headlines, and that's what we don't want. But just kind of starting off, this kind of gets us thinking about responsible ways to use AI, and that's kind of the reason for this lesson, is to coach you on how to use AI effectively. Some of the objectives that we're going to cover today, first of all, we're going to talk about prompt parsing. We're going to identify the role, the task, and the format in an RTF prompt. We're going to explain what each of those parts does. We're going to learn how to create these prompts from scratch, generate desired output, specify the role, the task, the format, given a scenario and a selected tool. We're going to talk about prompt revision. Given a prompt, how can we make it better with the RTF framework? Prompt illustrations, explain and demonstrate how to revise prompts to derive better outputs if you're given sample prompts and derivative outputs. And then we're going to talk a little bit about prompt collaboration. You're going to get an opportunity to discuss what you're learning with RTF prompting after you've messed around with it, after you've taken some assessments, and kind of give us some of those aha moments that you've had and that kind of thing. So, just kind of a general overview of artificial intelligence, that's AI. And when I was in computer science classes at Auburn, this was roughly about the year 2000, 2001, I had an artificial intelligence class, and my instructor defined AI in one word. He said, AI is just search. And used to be that was the case. You know, if you think about Deep Blue, which is a chess program back in the 90s, it would kind of create these massive trees about 20 moves ahead. And then it was able to look through these trees that it generated to determine the best output. And so it was just looking at its database, it was searching through these to find the best thing and selecting it. And that was the old way of doing AI. Today's models are a little bit more efficient. We do something called machine learning now, in which machines actually have a data set of some type, and they are able to take those data sets, and instead of just rote searching through them, they're able to make some connections. They're able to create new scenarios and that kind of thing. It's better AI, and it's made some advancements. So AI has improved past search now, and there are different types. Some of the types do not exist yet. The first two, super AI, that is when we anticipate AI becoming smarter than human beings. And we don't know when that's going to get here. We don't know if it's ever going to get here. But that is something that scientists and researchers and AI developers are kind of looking at, kind of working towards. Another area along those same lines is general AI, or AGI is what they call it, artificial general intelligence. This is another thing that doesn't exist yet. And AGI is interested in one AI that can solve a whole host of problems. What we have today is what we call narrow AI. And so each AI system is narrowly responsible for a particular situation. So, for instance, we have self-driving vehicles, but those self-driving vehicles, instead of having one AI that controls everything, we have a narrow AI that is specifically focused on vision. We have another AI that is specifically focused on how to turn. And then we've got kind of a framework that holds those things together, but just note that it's not AGI yet, it's not general intelligence. It is a whole bunch of narrow AIs that are kind of loosely conglomerated to do certain tasks. Here again, scientists are hoping to get to AGI, but at the present, that is not a reality, and we don't know how long it's going to take to get there. It might be a decade, it might be a couple of centuries. We just don't know. Machine learning, talked a little bit about that. This is an improvement over the original search that we talked about, but there are developments in machine learning. When you hear machine learning, AI, generative AI or Gen AI, and large language models, a lot of times those terms are tossed about synonymously. But just so you know, there's AI, and then machine learning is a subset of AI. And then generative AI is a subset of machine learning. And then large language models are a subset of that. And then chat GPTs and those kind of artificial intelligence products are kind of subsets. They're particular instances of large language models. There's a good YouTube video here. If you want some more details on that, I've jumped to the part where he begins explaining all this, but he gives a really good overview of all of these different types of AI. So that's kind of an introduction. But on the subject of large language models, today you've got at least 4, probably a whole lot more products. ChatGPT is probably the one that most everybody's familiar with, but there's also Anthropic's Claude, there's xAI's Grok, there's Google's Gemini, there's some others. I've used one called Perplexity AI that's more academic focused. But these are all what we call large language models, and they're called large language models because they have consumed or ingested a whole bunch of texts. They've looked at books, they've looked at newspaper articles, they've looked at the web. All of these different texts have been ingested by the AI, and it uses all of this data to see patterns like, how do we as human beings speak? What combinations do we use to combine words and things like that? And so that's kind of how AI is trained. And AI, large language models in particular, are based on a probability text generation algorithm. And so what it does is it looks through patterns that it's found, and it weights the next word. And so, if you say, hey, ChatGPT, tell me a story, well, 9 times out of 10, stories in what it's read in its database always begin with once. And so, if 90% of the time the first word is once, that's going to be the first word. And then the next word is probably going to be upon, then a, and then time, and so forth and so on. And so that's kind of how it works. It's probability-based text generation. It looks at all of the patterns that it's consumed. And, if you say, tell me a story, it says, okay, let me find all of the stories. How do those look? And that kind of thing. And so this pattern matching probabilistic model allows it to make a whole lot of determinations and sound really, really smart. But these things are often referred to as stochastic parrots. It is just repeating what it's learned. It's repeating what it's ingested. It's repeating what it's read. Sometimes this is accurate. Sometimes it's not. Another thing is, with it being stochastic, not only does it say what it's learned, but the stochastic nature means that you probably won't get the same response twice. If you say hello and ask ChatGPT for a greeting, the first time it might say hello. The next time it might say greetings. The next time it might say hi. Next time it might say salutations. What's up? That kind of thing. That's kind of the stochastic nature of AI, is that it varies its responses. So let's get into the subject of prompt engineering. Prompt engineering, I asked ChatGPT for a quick definition, and it gave this definition. It says it's the practice of crafting inputs to guide an AI model. What you're looking for is useful, accurate, and creative outputs from the AI that basically answers your question. And then it gets into things like the role that AI should take. It improves the relevance, the quality of AI generated responses. And so prompt engineering is kind of the art and or the science of asking ChatGPT and other large language models good questions. There are a variety of formats for this. I found this on LinkedIn. Somebody had shared this. The prompt framework that we're going over today is RTF, but you can kind of see that there are a lot of others. There's TAG and BAB and CARE and RISE, and you can actually ask a large language model about these. It's familiar with the way that these are done, and it can give you a very good explanation on that. But today we're mainly focused with RTF. All right, and so let's get into RTF prompting and talk a little bit about what that looks like. All right. When we want to ask AI a question, oftentimes we just ask the question directly. What is a Turing test? And we expect AI to give us an answer. For those of you who are not aware, Alan Turing was a British mathematician. There's a good movie about him called The Imitation Game that came out about a decade ago, and it focuses specifically on his role in creating the Enigma machine that helped earn the tide in World War II. But he was a mathematician, and he dabbled a little bit in what artificial intelligence would look like. He came up with this thing that's now called the Turing test, and it's designed to the test is basically if you are in the same room with an AI and a human, how do you tell the difference? How do you know that the AI that's talking to you is an AI or if it's human? And basically, you pass the Turing test if it's indistinguishable. If you can't tell whether what you're talking to is an artificial intelligence versus a human, you can't tell the difference, then that AI system is said to have passed the Turing test. A lot of the large language models today carry on conversations to where you might think they sound somewhat human. And so that's just kind of the question there. And you can ask AI, what is the Turing test? And it'll give you something along those lines. But there are some better ways to ask that question. And that's with the RTF prompting method. An RTF prompt consists of 3 parts. There's a role, there's a task, there's a format, and we're going to talk a little bit about those more in depth. This is one way to get some more specific information out of AI, to get better output out of AI by having AI jump through some hoops for you. All right, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is a role. A role tells ChatGPT what you want it to do. All right, it helps shape the tone, the perspective, the depth of the answer. And again, I asked ChatGPT, define role, and this is what it came up with. And then after that, I put in some examples. For instance, as a computer scientist, from a dentist perspective, if you were a marketing director, you're a poet, playing the role of a cowboy, act like a lawyer, you're basically telling the large language model what role you want it to play. There are a whole lot of different ways. You can kind of see a handful of ways to phrase that. But basically you're saying, ChatGPT, I want you to act in this way. And this doesn't just work on ChatGPT. You might hear me saying that a lot. But this also works on all of the models that I've talked about today. Just about every large language model available will do this. And you're telling it, put yourself in the position of this particular role. Next, we move on to the task. And the task is what you want ChatGPT to do, whether it's to define the Turing test or explain a concept, to give you advice, to give you recommendations, to write something for you, to write a song. Those are the things that you want AI to do. And here again, I asked ChatGPT, what's a task? And it's what the AI is being asked to do, explain, compare, summarize, create. You're directing what you want the large language model's purpose to be, what you want it to do, and it sets the expectations. You know, you're putting the bar there and saying, this is the hurdle that you have to jump for me. You have to make sure and specify your task clearly. Sometimes you have to refine your prompt, give it more detail, and that kind of thing in order to have your large language model give you the result that you want. Here are some tasks, some example tasks. Explain a Turing test, describe a root canal, give tips for maintaining a dishwasher, create a business plan, describe the First Amendment. You know, there's a whole lot of questions that we have, and sometimes websites don't do it for us today. Google's really good at finding websites with search terms based on keywords, but artificial intelligence can actually give us some beneficial things to do, and oftentimes it will scour the web. Sometimes it scours the web better than some of these search engines do. So that's the task. Finally, there's the format, and this is where you tell the large language model how you want your output received. You know, what do you want it to look like? If you don't put any parameters on this, a lot of times a large language model will just generate paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of text. But if you specify some things, you know, if you say, hey, make this look like a sales flyer, make it look like a comic strip, give it to me as a limerick, you know, give it to me as a haiku, briefly describe this in a paragraph, give me 2 or 3 sentences about that, give me a brief summary, create a country song with these lyrics, write a screenplay for me. This is how you want the AI to accomplish the task and format it. And a good prompt with RTF has all 3 components of that. Now, like I mentioned, there's other ways to prompt AI and get good responses. This is just one, but an RTF prompt requires all 3 of those pieces: a role, a task, a format. All right, some security cautions, and this is just some things in general about large language models that you need to know before we start getting into demonstrations and things like that, because we're actually going to use AI today, and hopefully you can kind of see some demonstrations about how this is done. But your security cautions, first of all, just note that AI is designed to answer your questions. That's its goal. It does not necessarily strive to be truthful. All right, and so that leads AI to make up stuff. That stuff that it makes up is called hallucinations, and you really have to check AI output, especially if you ask it about factual things. Sometimes it will fabricate things. There's a very famous story of a lawyer who used ChatGPT to write legal briefings for him. And he got in trouble because some of the legal briefings that he turned in to the judge was reviewing them and said, hey, this case doesn't exist. Hey, this quote was not in this case. And that kind of thing. And he got in a little bit of trouble. He wasn't aware that AI wasn't truthful. He didn't know that it was subject to hallucinations, and you know that it had some consequences for him. Another thing is that LLMs are subject to bias. You know, the AI is largely dependent on how it's trained, and so if you've got somebody with certain beliefs, whether that's religious or political or cultural or what have you, a lot of times those belief systems rub off on the AI. And so you kind of have to check your premises there with the output. You know, if you ask it a political question, you may not get the response that you want based on your particular bent. Privacy is also a concern. It's not a good idea to share personally identifiable information like your name, your address, phone number, social security number, things like that, or student information. If you're an instructor or you're a student, don't share a whole lot of personal details about yourself, because a lot of times what you share with the AI gets incorporated into its training data. And so, you don't know if later on down the road you give it your name, your address, your phone number, and then it tells somebody else who's using the same AI product and reveals things about you that you don't really want revealed. So kind of keep that in mind. Make sure that your private information does stay private. All right, so let's go ahead and get into ChatGPT and take a look at some of the things that we've been talking about. All right, so let's just ask it, what is a Turing test? All right, and it's generating a whole bunch of text, and you can kind of see that it's got, it's going on, it's giving me some bullet points. And this is decent. It's given a pretty good response here. But let's kind of make this better. All right. So what I want you to think about is the Turing test has to do with artificial intelligence. So what kind of a role could we have ChatGPT play to get a better response out of this? And furthermore, how do we make this a little bit more concise? Think about that for a second. And then you may have a different way to do this that you might want to play with later, but just kind of think about this. Let's think about the role that we would want ChatGPT to play, and the format that we want this in to get a more concise response. All right, and after you've done that for a second or two, here's what I'm going to use. You may have a slightly different scenario, and just experimenting with this will help you out with that. All right, so as a computer scientist, explain the Turing test in a bulleted list. All right, and so now it's given me a more concise answer. It's doing this in a bulleted list, and it's giving this to me as a computer scientist. All right. Now let's change the role. Let's change the output and do something a little bit more fun using the Turing test as an example. All right, so let's say you are a poet. Explain the Turing test as a rhyming couplet. All right, so I've got the role, I've got what we're doing, the task, and then the format. All right, let's kind of see what happens. A mind in code with words to jest. Can you discern if it's man or jest? That's a pretty good attempt at that. All right, now let's take advantage of the stochastic nature of ChatGPT and ask the exact same question again. And notice that I get a different response this time. A human speaks, a machine replies. Can thought be hid in a well-told lie? All right. And so you can ask the same thing over and over and over again, and depending on the way that the algorithm has changed, depending on the conversation that you've had, those probabilities become a little bit different, and it comes up with a secondary response. And so you can kind of take advantage of that. If you don't like the way that your question was answered, you can give it the exact same question again, and chances are high that you'll get a different response. All right, let's look at some other things. Note that the way that I've been giving this is in role, task, and format, but there's nothing set in stone that says that the role has to come first, the task has to come second, and the output has to come third. All right, so let's take a look at that. All right, so um, write a limerick as a poet describing the Turing test. The machine in the chat was confessed to be part of a curious test. If it talks like a man with a clever, sly plan, it might just be thought to possess. So that's an interesting response, and it did follow that. But note that this time the output came first. I told it to output a limerick. The role came second, and the task came third. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're going through your assessments. Just note that just because it comes first doesn't necessarily mean it's the role, and so forth and so on. So what you're looking for is the format. What is the output that's described? The role. What part is AI playing in that? And the task. What is AI doing for you there? So I've gone on about the Turing test, but just note that it knows a lot of other things. So let's say, as a plumber, describe the benefits of PEX pipe and in a 4-sentence summary paragraph. As a plumber, I can tell you PEX pipe is a game changer for modern plumbing. It's flexible, which makes installation quicker and easier, especially in tight spaces. And so you can kind of see it followed my output to a T. It gave me 4 sentences. And it did kind of act like a plumber in this regard, but you can do this all day with all kinds of different responses, and ChatGPT will help tell you what you need to know. Let's try another one. Describe a root canal as a dentist and output as a journal entry. And it does exactly what you told it to do. It acts just like a dentist. And if you were to open his journal, you might find something that looks similar to this. Of course, this probably has some embellishments and things like that built into it, just because of the nature of being a journal entry. But you can kind of see that this is great about any task that you want it to do. Let's say that you're looking for a job after you graduate from college, and so you want to say, as a job seeker, write a cover letter for a software company that you are applying to. All right, and so the job seeker is the role, the cover letter is the output, and you're doing a job application. That's the task, is that you're trying to get a job there. All right, and we're going to go through, and it's going to give you exactly what you need to know. And of course, you'll have to tailor this, um, but you can come back and give it some additional details. Again, privacy may be a concern here. You know, if you're applying for a job, you may not necessarily want to give AI the company name that you're applying for, and that kind of thing. But you know, it'll give you some feedback at the end and say, hey, if you'd like this tailored to a specific company or role, you can give me that information, and I can do a better job of that. You can also give it things like skills that you have, and it can tailor the letter according to your experience. So, just wanted to play around with AI, show you a little bit about how to incorporate that RTF format, and hopefully that kind of explains things. If you have any questions or comments about the lesson this week, please feel free to send me an email or a Canvas course message. And I'd look forward to just clarifying some of those things. Some of the references, that YouTube video that I referenced, it's got some really good information. It's about an 8-minute video that goes through the different types of AI, and it's really, really interesting. There's also a ChatGPT session that I used in order to create this presentation, some of the information from it and that kind of thing. And the clip art images came from Canva.